and loaded into an SUV being driven by a person who looks like they're trying to look shady. Oh, and the driver is Liz. You know, the head of human resources at SIP. She's the one who got into the high-speed car chase through Seattle. So Christian has figured out that something's up and that Mia's missing, so he calls the cops, and he's tracking Anna's cell phone, which she hid in the bag of money. So everyone's converging on the spot where Jack has Mia tied up. Jack beats Anna up and kicks her in the stomach, so, oh no, pregnant. Then Anna shoots Jack, and the police arrive, and that's it. The entire standoff resolves in about 45 seconds. From there, it's just a slow roll downhill to the end. Christian wants a baby now, and the baby's okay, and he hears all of Jack Hyde's motivations and stuff, sort of, I guess. Christian is shocked because he realizes that the only substantial difference between him and being a pervert middle manager is that he started off with millions of dollars and turned it into billions, but this rare moment of accurate self-assessment is undercut by Anna disagreeing.
If I'd been left in the system, who knows how it would have turned out.
You're a man of honor. And you treat people well.
I got rid of it. You're showing plenty as it is. I get off of punishing women who look like you.
Like your mother.
I tried emailing you. It bounced. There's no Anastasia Gray at SIP.
And you treat people well.
Turns out Jack and Christian were in the same foster home in Detroit, and Jack remembers and resents Christian, and we'll talk about this in a bit. We're almost done the movie. Anna and Christian visit the grave of Christian's birth mother, and he doesn't once call her the crack whore.
The crack whore used to let me play with her hair, I think. I don't know if it's a memory or a dream.
Whoa, his birth mom.
There's a montage of all the highlights from the trilogy, which is weird because it really just calls attention to the fact that nothing has really happened. Then the movie fake ends with Anna setting up the playroom, and it's the first time in the movies that Christian's ratty dom jeans have gotten any explicit attention rather than just being an environmental detail. So this loving close-up of Anna reverently laying them out on the bed is kind of comical. Christian comes in and remarks that Anna is topping from the bottom, a line that we're going to be talking about a lot in a bit, and fade to black for a few credits before an epilogue where everyone's happy and rich and Anna's pregnant with their second kid. The end. All right, get a drink. We'll be right back. This episode
Another big
is
show
brought
is
to
in
you by
focus.
tap water. Good old municipal tap water.
Okay, so I'm not sure I can even talk about this, but U.S. Cellular has a new deal where you can get any phone
Yeah, for
for
sure.
free. Seriously.
This is by far the most literal adaptation of the three, no doubt helped by Master of the Universe 2
Oh,
being
thank you.
somewhat more self-contained and
I try.
less of a sprawling catastrophe. There's a bunch of stuff, but the main one that I really want to talk about is that last line, because I've been wanting to talk about it since we started. It's this line from Christian to Anna: I believe you're topping from the bottom. Flashback time. Mitchell also has an awkward habit of juxtaposing erotic imagery with infantilizing internal commentary from Anastasia. Anna is seemingly perpetually confused by the world around her and naive to the point of farce, a thread that persists all the way to the very end of the trilogy.
You know you're topping from the bottom.
He murmurs against my lips. What? I don't understand what he's talking about.
If you've been following along with the movies and you still find these characters to be insufferable and frustrating, that's fair. But I promise you, it doesn't hold a candle to the books. Mitchell as a writer
Folding
is seemingly
ideas.
incapable
A
of
lukewarm
ever-changing
defense of 50 Shades of Grey.
all the way up to the final page
Part
of the
3.
book. Anna is still utterly oblivious to the world that she has gotten herself into. So this change, having Anna implicitly acknowledge that she is, in fact, the one who's really in control here, I like it. I wish it were in a better movie. One of my favorite changes from the book, mostly because of how it contrasts the original, has to be the ending with Christian's mom's gravestone. Like, this is such a natural endpoint for Christian as a character. The book is even called 50 Shades Freed. Christian is 50 Shades. Anna calls him 50 constantly in her inner monologue, so the title of the book is Christian Grey Freed. It is the book where ostensibly Christian finally gets over his myriad problems and can be normal. Except he doesn't. Okay, so in Darker, at the midpoint of the book, remember, Christian has a major miraculous breakthrough where he no longer feels compelled to take out his psychosexual hang-ups on Anna, at least as far as physical violence is concerned, and he lets Anna touch him. So after that, the big hang-ups would be his need for petty control and his fear of parenthood, which is tied in with his resentment of his mother. All right, in this book, he resolves one of these, which is that he gets over his very specific hang-ups about being afraid the baby will split Anna's attention and she won't be able to devote all her energy to managing his emotions anymore. But he's still petty and controlling. Just look at the whole email argument and the sunbathing argument and the went out drinking with Kate argument. None of that comes back. None of it is resolved, and Christian never lets go of that problem. But it's the other one that's just baffling. The first time Christian refers to his mother in 50 Shades of Grey, he calls her a crack whore, and the last time he refers to her in 50 Shades Freed, he calls her the crack whore.
How do you feel about that? I whisper. He frowns.
About having no living relatives? Fuck that, if they were anything like the crack whore.
He shakes his head in disgust.
So why is it that the film version is able to see such an obvious bit of closure where the originals weren't? The answer is that Erica Mitchell just doesn't think that there's anything wrong with this framing, since Anna also refers to Christian's mother as the crack whore.
This is confusing. I'm his wife, not his submissive, not some company he's acquired. I'm not the crack whore who was his mother.
Change of pace. Let's disassemble Jack's plot in its entirety, and for that we're going to go all the way back to childhood. Jack Hyde spends his youth in the foster care system of Michigan. When he is 8 or 9, Christian is put into the same home as him for 2 months. At some point, Jack is adopted or simply ages out, but either way, he is able to attend Princeton, graduate, and move out to Seattle, where he gets a job as the fiction editor at a successful boutique publisher. He also becomes a sex pervert and rapist who molests his co-workers and keeps a log of sex tapes as leverage. Then, one day, he hires a new assistant named Anastasia Steele. At the end of her first week on the job, they go out to a bar where Jack meets her boyfriend, Christian Grey, which starts some wheels spinning in Jack's head. The next night, he infiltrates an exclusive charity dinner and auction in order to creep on Christian. The following Tuesday, Jack pins Anastasia against the door of his office and gropes her, then gets kneed in the balls and beat up by her boyfriend's security guard. Later that evening, he's fired because Christian has all but officially bought the company. 2 days later, he sabotages Christian's helicopter, Charlie Tango, causing it to crash in the forest near Mount St. Helens, but Christian survives. The next night, Jack watches them celebrate Christian's birthday from across the lake at their home. 2 months later, he breaks into Christian Grey's offices and hacks into Grey's personal files before firebombing the servers. He then contacts his former coworker Liz and uses the threat of releasing their sex tape to have her get into a car chase with Christian and Anna from the countryside into downtown Seattle. What the point of that was remains unknown because Anna manages to shake her off in traffic. A week and a half after the bombing, he steals an elevator maintenance van, outfits it with fake license plates, and uses the van and, I guess, the tools in it to gain access to the elevator at Escala, which gives him access to the apartment where he hides in the closet with a kitchen knife until Anna comes home. He then tries to kidnap Anna at this point, but is incapacitated by her personal security and arrested by police, who find a note in the van that says, "You owe me a life." A few weeks later, he is granted bail set at $500,000, which he pays. The next day, Jack is released from custody and, with the help of Liz, immediately kidnaps Christian's sister Mia and tries to ransom her for $5 million, but is thwarted when Anna shoots him in the leg with a gun, and also the cops arrive and arrest him. So, it's maybe a little weird and pointless to interrogate the inner life of a one-dimensional character, though it's just as weird that Jack starts as Anna's antagonist, but we're assured that no, he actually already hated Christian before Christian got him fired, and everything with Anna is basically pure coincidence. This is why the baby plotline feels so weird. It doesn't really matter because Anna doesn't really want anything. The last thing she wanted was a career of her own, so Christian bought her a publishing company. Since then, she's pretty much been on autopilot. Part of what makes a thriller great is watching a convoluted plan come together. A good thriller has a plan that's complicated and maybe even a little bit wacky, but there's this deep satisfaction from watching it all fall into place. This is not that. Jack's scheme is less of a plan and more of a series of disconnected twists that make good cliffhangers for a serial fan fiction that was being written with an end goal but no plan. The longer you think about it, the worse it gets. I mean, for one, all the individual parts are just absurd on their own merits. A woman who works in human resources gets into a high-speed chase through traffic for no discernible reason. A fiction editor sabotages a private helicopter and firebombs a server after stealing personal files that have no purpose or value in their own right. Now, if you want to talk about one of the clearest examples of backfill, where a writer has addressed a problem in their writing not by going back and making changes to the earlier parts of the text, but by explaining things after the fact, we need to talk about Link. The ultimate antagonist of the 50 Shades book, the puppet master at the middle of it all, is a man named Link, or Mr. Lincoln. He's only mentioned in the books about 5 times total, depending on how you count, and even the fan wiki considers him so superfluous to the story that he isn't even given an entry in the list of minor characters. An added scene at the end of the unrated cut of the film refers to him as John Lincoln, so the movies eventually gave him a first name, but he's not in the theatrical cut at all. Even in the extended version, he's only in 2 scenes in Freed, one where he's introduced and one where he's arrested. And you know what? I'm hard-pressed to decide which is worse storytelling. Having an epilogue that amounts to, oh yeah, this guy here, he totally did it. He did it all because reasons. And also, he did it by funding this other guy who wanted to destroy Christians' life for completely unrelated reasons. Or having an
make sure it doesn't
epilogue that
bleed
leaves you
through.
with the absurd conclusion that a fiction editor would have the means, skill, and opportunity to sabotage a helicopter in an incredibly precise way such that it would still work but would fail after several hours of flight, infiltrate the high-security areas of an office tower belonging to a notoriously paranoid billionaire to plant a James Bond-style bomb, steal a car, forge a fake license plate, break into the home of aforementioned billionaire at a point when he has explicitly raised security, and just pay $500,000 in bail. And if you think I'm being a little thin with motivation here, this is about all that exists. Basically, Link found out about Christian's relationship with Elena, and then they got a divorce. But also he was abusing her, so they were probably going to get a divorce anyway. Oh, look, there's that thread again, where people become doms because of unresolved trauma. But that's it. That's the sum total of Link as he appears in both book and film. And again, the only reason that the books have a secret puppet master villain in the first place is because Mitchell needed to explain how Jack suddenly had the resources to both get and pay bail when he's being charged with arson, grand theft auto, breaking and entering, and attempted kidnapping. The funny thing is that this was really easy to fix. Just make Elena the actual villain. From a filmmaking perspective, this movie just makes the previous movie all the more confusing because it's not like they were adapting 50 Shades Darker before 50 Shades Freed was written. The books were done. You could read the whole thing and know how it ends and work towards a conclusion instead of ending 50 Shades Darker on the same abrupt, I have no idea where I'm going with this note that Mitchell did when she finished Master of the Universe in 2010. I don't know why they didn't make that change, why they decided to try and do a literal adaptation and then cut it for something just as bad. The only answer I can posit is that reading the books are very defensive of Elena. So keep in mind that Christian's framing of problems and conflicts is almost always taken as true or superior or justified. Christian consistently goes to bat for Elena. Whenever Anna does get to voice some criticism of her, Christian always defends Elena, and the final landing point in the book is Christian saying that maybe a sexual relationship between a middle-aged woman and a 15-year-old boy isn't a great idea, but they were both wrong, and they'd still be friends, but Anna doesn't like Elena, so he's willing to let that friendship go. It's messed up. In conclusion, 50 Shades of Grey is a land of contrasts, or as the natives call it, maze. It's corny, is what I'm saying. The books are and remain a contentious piece of literature for the way they muddy the line between kink and abuse, replicating and reinforcing abusive and potentially deadly relationship dynamics. The movies are a nominal thematic improvement, but despite good changes to characterization and some light plot restructuring, the movies ultimately hew too close to the books and in turn inherit almost all the original structural problems. While the first movie shows a surprising amount of creative talent and effort, the second and third are notably devoid of creative energy, with long stretches where the lead actors seem irritated to still be there. Anyway, the movie denouements with a montage which is up there with a dance number in the pantheon of we didn't know quite how to end this one, but really the critical thing is that Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 ended with a little musical montage, so 50 Shades has to end with a musical montage. To quote fellow critic Jenny Nicholson, "At least in Twilight those movies escalated to an insane degree, so it was like, look how far they've come. In this one, they're just married now. It's the same." But you know what? I'm going to disagree with that. Look at how far they've come. Look at how far we've all come.
Not some company he's acquired. I'm not the crack who was his mother. You know, you're top.
Say hello to Jergens Melanin Glow, enriched with silky cocoa and shea butters, with the gold around.
Skip that out.
The cover for 50 Shades Darker features the Venetian mask that Anna wears to the Grey's Masquerade Ball in Chapter 6. You'd assume that masks are thematically relevant to the rest of the book, like 50 Shades Darker is about the masks we wear, the idea of persona, and the exaggerated or false versions of ourselves that we create for different environments and scenarios. Congratulations, you just put more thought into metaphor than the author. 50 Shades Darker is a 2017 film directed by James Foley, written by Neil Leonard, based off the 2011 novel of the same name, written by television executive Erica Mitchell under the pen name E.L. James. While the previous film put a lot of effort into trying to elevate the source material into a dark romance drama, 50 Shades Darker gets trapped in the whirlpool of its source material and drowns. The key bit to remember from the full history of 50 Shades is that Darker was originally the second half of a singular fanfiction titled Master of the Universe, encompassing chapters 53 through 87 of that fic, originally published online in serial format from late 2009 through early 2010. The other point to remember is that even though creative leads had contracts securing them for the entire trilogy, the second and third films weren't technically greenlit when the first film was in production. In the weeks leading up to the release of 50 Shades of Grey, Universal announced their plans for 50 Shades Darker and 50 Shades Freed. The two films would be shot back-to-back in 2016, with Darker releasing early 2017 and Freed in early 2018. Then, a month after the release of 50 Shades, in March of 2015, it was announced that director Sam Taylor Johnson and screenwriter Kelly Marcel would not be returning for the subsequent films, both citing conflicts with Mitchell as part of the reason for their departure. The two women would subsequently be replaced by work-for-hire director James Foley, best known for a dozen episodes of House of Cards, the 1992 adaptation of Glengarry Glen Ross, and several Madonna music videos from the 80s, and television writer Neil Leonard, best known for being married to Erica Mitchell. Like so many of the films that I talk about here, 50 Shades Darker is a movie that largely defies your ability to keep it all in order. There isn't a strong plot or a clear sense of escalation or even a coherent sort of episodic series of events, so it's easy to get all just a bit jumbled. So, for review, the plot of 50 Shades Darker goes like this. Oh, and for comedy purposes, keep in mind that the following events all happen in the span of 11 days. For a prologue, Christian has a bad dream about his bad, dark, grim, dark, sad childhood. I'm not trying to make light of abuse, it's just that this entire thread is handled with about as much delicacy as the death of Batman's parents. Anyway, credits. Anna is sad because of breakup. The title montage calls attention to Leela, the woman that is stalking Anna, done in a way that is filmically appropriate, but comical once you realize how little she will matter.
I guess prints are gray, right?
Another focal point is Anna's new job as the assistant to fiction editor Jack Hyde. Anna goes to her friend Jose's art exhibit, which consists mostly of giant copies of Dakota Johnson's actor headshots. Christian, looking distinctly purple, shows up and buys her photos. Anna ditches Jose to instead have dinner with Christian. He tells her that he wants to try again, and this time...
You wanna
It might be black.
manipulate
There's a gray.
the vanilla relationship?
There's a metallic.
Well, let's put a pin in that. Anna goes to work.
Is it
Jack
mid?
invites her out for drinks. The head of human resources makes a face that tells the audience that this is a bad idea because she clearly knows something about Jack Hyde that's a red flag above and beyond his name being Jack Hyde. Anna has an encounter with Leela in the street where we are shown the bloody bandages on her wrist, letting us know that she's a crazy person in a movie. Anna doesn't even touch her beer and manages about 3/4 of a sentence worth of conversation with Jack before Christian shows up, and they immediately leave to get groceries and product placement.
Your new favorite flavor.
They cook dinner while Jamie Dornan tries really hard to look like he doesn't know how to use a kitchen knife. As Christian and Anna are talking, she pieces together that Christian is buying the company she works for. They argue, they have sex, they pillow talk, and Leela breaks in and watches them sleep. Anna tries to give back the $24,000 Christian got from selling Anna's old beat-up blue Volkswagen, and then Christian has one of his people deposit the money directly into her bank account.
Christian, how do you have my payment information?
They have an argument about Leela over breakfast. Christian invites Anna to his parents' charity
Do I
ball,
not have a
takes her to
darker
a salon.
Why would you take her to meet the woman who seduced and abused you?
They fight in the street about it because, I mean, really? Back at home, Christian fills in the backstory on
black.
Leela.
She wanted more. I didn't. So I ended it. When you and I were in Georgia together, she turned up here and tried to slit her wrists in front of Mrs. Jones, my housekeeper.
Put a pin in that one, too. In the course of this conversation, he reveals he has a stalker folder for all of his ex-subs and prospective subs. Anna demands to see hers and is rightfully upset.
Sex is not gonna fix this right now. Are you insane?
Anna,
But Christian placates her by letting her draw a map of his no-go zone with lipstick, and the dossier is never mentioned again. They get ready for the ball, which includes Anna wearing a set of Benoit balls, also known as Kegel balls. They go to the charity ball, where Anna gets super turned on by the Kegel balls, and can I just say that I hate this shot so much? It's not strictly a bad shot, but I've seen it so many times at this point that I can't help but notice how overly posed and unnatural it is, with Christian being at a perfect 90-degree angle to Anna, who's staring straight at the camera, and how it doesn't actually flow with the preceding shot because of the way that the eyeline changes. Well, maybe that's just me. During the auction, Anna spends the $24,000 on a weekend at Christian's cabin. They have sex in Christian's childhood bedroom. A mysterious figure is lurking on the stairs, taking photos of Christian's family. It's important, but it'll never make sense. Elena confronts Anna in the hallway and is just vaguely menacing.
Do you think you're the first woman he'd hoped would save him?
We'll put a big pin in this conversation because this is when we start to really get into the whole BDSM is damaged subtext rising to the level of pure text. When they get home after the party, Anna's car is destroyed, presumably by Leela. Put a pin in it. Anna and Christian spend the night and the next day on his boat. On Monday at work, Jack is suddenly an asshole. There's a whole tiff over Anna going to New York with him for Book Expo, which turns into a tiff with Christian about Book Expo. Put a pin in it. Anna shows up at Christian's place, and there's a lengthy introduction to Mrs. Jones. Put a pin in it. Christian comes home, and the two of them bone. There's more of the weird non-argument argument about Book Expo, where Christian is hung up on Anna going to New York without him. Put a second pin in it. At the end of work the next day, Jack attacks Anna, and Christian sends Taylor in to beat up Jack. Christian gets Jack fired and convinces Anna to move in. The next day at work, keeping in mind that this is now the middle of Anna's second week at the job, Anna is asked to fill in for Jack at an editor's meeting where all the olds are like, "We should sell less books." And she wows everyone with her wisdom by saying, "Actually, I think we should sell more books," which earns her a temporary promotion from assistant to acting fiction editor after 8 days with the company. The fact that her boyfriend just bought the company totally has nothing to do with it, I swear. There's a bunch of sex. At work, Anna is talking with Jack's other assistant, Hannah, who is now her assistant, and we get the movie's philosophical statement on the ideal nature of power.
I mean, am I expected to call you Miss Steele?
I expect you to call me Anna. And I don't expect you to fetch me coffee unless you're getting some for yourself. And the rest of it we'll just make up as we go.
After work, Anna goes to her apartment to get some things, and Leela confronts her with a gun. Christian walks in and uses his super dom hypno powers on Leela, and Anna runs away and wanders the street for a couple hours. Leela will never be seen again, and there's still 40 minutes of the movie left to cover. When she gets home, she has a fight with Christian where Jamie Dornan really struggles to keep his American accent up with all the hard N sounds.
She had a gun, Anna.
And we get the big moment you've all been waiting for.
I'm a sadist. I like to whip little brown-haired girls like you because you all look like the crack whore, my birth mother.
Dominate.
I'm not a dominant. I'm not. The right term is a sadist. I get off of punishing women who look like you.
Like your mother.
Oh. Well, that's disappointing. Put a pin in it. Anyway, he lets her touch his chest, which means he's fixed now and doesn't need BDSM. That night, he proposes in his sleep, then again the next morning, and then Anna finds out it's Christian's birthday on Saturday, so she gets him a gift, and now he needs to go to Portland for work, but he'll be back Friday night, so Anna goes drinking with friends, and Christian's helicopter crashes, but it's cool. He's fine. He walks in, no big deal.
What the hell are y'all doing here?
Anna tells him to open the gift because it's past midnight, so it's his birthday, and it's a keychain that says yes, so they have a bunch of sex. At Christian's birthday party, there's a waiter with hors d'oeuvres who gets all moon-eyed at Christian, put a pin in it, then Christian announces their engagement, which elicits a sinister close-up from Jose, who is inexplicably at this party, even though in the extended edition he explicitly says he's not going to be there because it would be weird.
Will we be seeing you tomorrow at his party?
Don't push it.
There's another confrontation with Elena that includes a baffling jump cut. That right there, I didn't cut that. It really just straight up cuts between two nearly identical close-ups that are only offset by a slight angle. This movie was in theaters. Back in Christian's childhood room, Anna and Christian have a conversation about Christian's birth mom, and there's a Chronicles of Riddick poster on the wall behind his door, which has a background storytelling element, is far more interesting
I
than
appreciate it.
anything in the actual conversation. Then they go out to the boathouse. Christian re-proposes, this time with a ring, and there's fireworks, and everyone is happy except Jack Hyde, who's looking on from the other side of the lake, being all sinister, and he's got a printout of the photo that he took of the photo in the house. So now that we know that the sinister
Damn,
person
I've been
turned
drawing
the
for
ball
30 minutes.
was in fact
I
Jack Hyde.
Did not notice.
Anyway, that's what happens in this movie. Are you tired of subscription loot boxes that send you metaphorical garbage every month? Introducing Garbox, the only subscription loot box focused exclusively on literal, actual garbage. The theme this month and every month is fast food paper waste. Go to d.rip/foldablehuman and enter the offer code SENDMEGARBAGE to start receiving Garbox today.
I like
Most of the
anime
nice
too.
things that there are to say
I
about
like
the
some
movie
anime.
are largely carried over from the previous
Some
film,
of
to
it-
the point that I could
some of
pretty
it gets
much
weird,
copy-paste
I
those
will admit.
details here.
They need to cool
The removal
down.
of Anna's internal monologue both improves the story and her character.
I don't like-
Christian is still
I've
a
only
manipulative
watched the,
stalker, but he's
live
less of
action
a
One Piece,
terrifying
though.
rage monster.
I know, like,
The through
I know a
line
bunch of
where Christian
lore,
endlessly needles Anna
'cause I keep
over
reading
the
fanfic
habits
about
of
it,
control entirely,
'cause I have, like, my
and
favorite
ditto the
characters
endless
from the
needling
live
over birth
action.
control, so on, so forth. For
but
book-specific changes, it's
my older
suggested
sister's
that Anna gets her
more
temporary
into
promotion from assistant
One
to
Piece than I
fiction
am.
editor in
She's
the middle
pissed I
of her
won't watch
second
it.
week at the job because she impresses the
Shit, what
weirdo
was I looking for?
editor-in-chief, which,
This one.
I mean, it's
Oh, wait.
an improvement over the book where Christian pretty blatantly pulls strings to make sure she gets promoted and then mocks her for it.
Don't tell them
He says.
Thank you.
Don't tell them what?
that I own it. The heads of agreement was signed yesterday. The news is embargoed for 4 weeks while the management at SIP makes some changes.
Oh, will I be out of a job? I ask, alarmed.
I sincerely doubt it.
Christian says wryly, trying to stifle his smile.
The management here gave you Hyde's job to babysit. They didn't want the expense of hiring a senior executive when the company was mid-sale. They had no idea what the new owner would do with it once it passed into his ownership, and, wisely, they didn't want an expensive redundancy. So, they gave you Hyde's job to caretake until the new owner,
He pauses and his lips twitch in an ironic smile.
namely, me, took over.
Namely,
A
me.
lot of boring logistical stuff is being dropped. The movie takes advantage of the break between films to conveniently forget that half of Anna's life is in Portland and half is in Seattle, so we don't need to deal with her trying to get down to Portland for Jose's show, or Jose being stranded in Seattle during Christian's helicopter mishap, forcing him to sleep in the bedroom Christian keeps for his subs, listening to the two of them bang in the room above all night. Yes, literally all of that is in the book in excruciating detail.
He switches the water onto Max. Geez! Arctic water spurts over my backside, and I squeal, then stop, mindful once more that Jose is above us.
The break between the movies also implies a less concrete span of time between the two films. There's still definitely the impression that it's recent, and based on events that have stated temporal relationships, like Jose's exhibit, the overall timeline hasn't really been changed at all, but it's better to not call attention to it, because it kind of sucks all the drama and significance out of the end of the previous movie, once you say it out loud that the two of them remain
draw
broken up
hands
for
or shit.
less than 4 full days. Still, saying that the movie has at least managed to rise above the source material is, in this case, damning with faint praise. The filmmakers don't
forget how
exactly
hands
deserve
work.
Oscars for having the good sense to drop the scene where Anna
He
is
just has
blown
really
away
weird
and Christian
hands
has given
now.
her an
It's just
iPod
gonna
with
happen.
12 songs on it. This book takes place in 2011. From the perspective of design, tone, and the overall nature of the adaptation, Darker is still decidedly contiguous with the first film, and this is probably the most interesting thing about it. Despite the change in creative leads and Erica Mitchell consolidating creative power, the second and third film are still built on the foundation laid by the previous writer and director. Most notably, Anna and Christian still behave like their film versions instead of their book versions. Now, I can't speak definitively as to why, but I have an educated guess, and it comes down to studio interference and the nature of the new hires. The first film had performed incredibly well at the box office, but there's still the limited shelf life for these kinds of cultural phenomenon, and even by 2015, it was obvious that 50 Shades' moment of cultural relevance had peaked and was now on the downslope. This is why Universal opted to film the two movies back-to-back on a reduced budget per film. James Foley's hiring wasn't official until November 2015, with the film scheduled to go to camera in February of 2016. With such an extremely limited time frame and an already successful film, there was probably a mandate from Universal that boiled down to no more big changes. The other thing that's significant is that Neil Leonard and James Foley both have the majority of their experience working in television. In fact, this is probably why James Foley was hired in the first place. As a television director, he's used to coming into a situation with limited personal pre-production, where he's directing episodes 6, 8, and 13 of a series that's been running for 2 seasons already, where production designers and the camera department essentially work independent of him. You know, he shows up on set and costume department comes to him and is like, okay, here's the stuff that this character wears. Which one do you want for this scene? Television directors and writers tend to put a lot of power into the hands of actors because the actors are the constant in the scenario. So, with a probable mandate from Universal to just get things done, stay on schedule, and not rock the boat, I would assume that Foley, in turn, would basically defer to Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan on set whenever it came to questions about how their characters would behave, their phrasing, tone of voice, reactions, and general interplay. That said, you can still totally tell that Sam Taylor Johnson and Kelly Marcel were replaced by men. There's a character to the framing and blocking of scenes, most notable in the sex. Out of darker sex scenes, Christian only takes off his pants once, and there's a distinct discomfort with framing Christian's nudity in an overtly sexual manner meant for consumption, landing instead on self-depictions of masculinity that hetero men are more comfortable with. Where the first film included shots like this, where the focus of the shot is on Christian's sexual form, his movement and poise in an overtly sexual scenario, the closest equivalent shot in Darker is when Anna watches Christian work out. It may feel slight, the difference between a shot that says, "This man is coming to fuck you," and one that says, "Look at this dude getting buff," but it's an aesthetic sensibility that pervades the visual language of the film. So let's start talking about that adaptation.
He's gonna
50
be
Shades Darker
green.
is a nightmare of a book to try and adapt. As the second half of a huge directionless serial fanfiction, it, more than any other part of the series, suffers from all the maladies that serial fiction tends to attract. The overall plot is unfocused and moves sparsely throughout the book. The vast
There's my
majority of
quote.
the page count is dedicated to repetitive arguments and squabbles that neither advance the plot or develop the characters, and the nearest thing to a central plot resolves a little more than halfway through the book, with the remainder of the volume stuffed to bursting with more arguments and a series of dead-end episodes that are telltale of a zombie fic. One that is narratively resolved, but continues to update weekly, propelled only by the author's own creative inertia and ego. The movie adapts maybe 50% of the book, and huge chunks of the first half are just outright discarded. Like, to give you an
What eyes
idea
does he
of what
have?
was dropped, after Anna's car is trashed, they spend several hours lingering at a Scala while phone calls are made. There's an argument about Leela and an argument about Elena before they move to a hotel. A process that includes a beat-by-beat navigation of who is staying in which room, as though it's going to be critically important for the reader to have a sense of the geography of the hotel and how far away their bodyguards are. But then, nothing happens. All they do is have sex, sleep, and Christian's on-call gynecologist comes over to the hotel and guilt trips Anna for forgetting to take her pill and then gives her a pregnancy test and hormone injection. Then they buy Anna a new car, which Christian refuses to let her drive. Oh, and also, earlier, she found out that Christian buys all his subs the same car, and so this is important because Christian is now buying her a car that's different from the car that all the other subs got. And I know it feels like I'm spending a lot of time belaboring this point, and now imagine just how thrilling it must be to actually read this because it gets a lot of pages. The longest chapter in the book is an extension of the argument about New York that involves Anna getting an email from Elena and then sending an angry email to Christian, to which Christian gets upset because she sent an explicit email over the company's servers. So off-page, Christian has his people call SIT IT people to have the email deleted off the servers, and then Jack comes back into the scene and just tells Anna that the situation has changed and management says she's not allowed to go to New York after all, and Anna goes to a Scala and then Elena shows up and they argue, then Elena leaves and Anna fights with Christian about Elena, and then they fight about Anna not being allowed to drive her new car, and there's a whole subplot where Kate's brother Ethan, not to be confused with Kate's boyfriend Elliot, is staying over for a few days, so Anna needs to get him the spare keys to her apartment, but Christian doesn't want her to leave the office and gets mad at her because she walked to the deli to get lunch, and so she needs to get explicit permission from Christian to walk out to the curb to hand Ethan the house keys, and all of that takes multiple emails to negotiate. Chapter 17 consists largely of Christian allowing Anna to drive her new car for the first time, an event through which he treats her like a tween being allowed to pull down the driveway for the first time and not, an adult who's been driving for years and is comfortable making the 3-hour drive from Portland to Seattle and back. Like, he won't let her turn on the radio because music would be too distracting.
Can we have the radio on? I ask as we wait at the first stop sign.
I want you to concentrate.
He says sharply. Christian, please. I can drive with music on. I roll my eyes. He scowls for a minute, then reaches for the radio.
You can play your iPod and MP3 disc as well as CD songs.
He murmurs.
Also, that exchange implies he's compromising by letting her listen to her personal collection of music, but not the I mean, I get that this is supposed to be Christian obsessing over Anna's safety, like reviewing the actuarial tables for the Saab 9.3 convertible option after Anna says maybe she'd like to get a convertible is just an extension of hiring more security guards after Leela gets a gun permit. But it's also kinda dumb. And yes, that does happen.
Christian frowns and peers at me.
Convertible.
He asks, raising an eyebrow. I flush. It's like he has a direct hotline to my inner goddess, which, of course, he has. It's most inconvenient at times. I stare down at my hands. Christian turns to Troy.
What are the safety stats on the convertible?
Troy, sensing Christian's vulnerability, heads in for the kill, reeling off all manner of statistics.
It's not cute. There's no
Cool, I'm
tension,
gonna stop
and
now.
it's not relevant. There's no moment where